Hello, everybody. Greetings from Jeff Brown here in Beijing, Radio Sinoland. We will be going to the Philippines tomorrow for spring break, so I'll have another show when we get back. News this week, the Chinese helped uh, 10 countries from around the world get their citizens out of Yemen due to the fact that the United States, through their Saudi proxy, is now destroying another country in the Middle East. And so the Chinese actually had a total of 577 citizens in Yemen. I wonder what they were doing there, but you have to, with all of their investments throughout Africa and the Middle East, it doesn't surprise me. The One of the ships that came in to the port of Aden was actually under fire, or on the port of Aden. The PLA Army, the Navy actually went onshore to secure the port to help citizens from China, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Singapore, Italy, Germany, Poland, Ireland, Britain, Canada, and Yemen escape the American-Saudi chaos that's being perpetrated on Yemen. So that's quite interesting. People are wondering, well, why was there a Chinese frigate off the coast of Yemen? And that's because China has 7 of the world's 10 largest container ports, so the other 3 being Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Busan in South Korea, and Singapore. So when you have 70% of the 10 biggest container ports in the world, the Chinese have a massive amount of maritime shipping going on from the Chinese coast through the Malacca Straits, between Malaysia and Indonesia, across the Indian Ocean, and up through the Suez Canal. So the Chinese have a pretty big naval presence off the coast of the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa to protect all of the thousands of Chinese container shipments coming and going to their country. The next thing I wanted to talk about is we are now getting a lot of in the mainstream press in the West that Xi Jinping is now trying to create a cult around him, like Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping. A good example of this was an article I read by Willie Lam, W-I-L-L-Y, Lam, L-A-M, a China expert, as they call them. And I'm just, after I read this article, I'm wondering if this was actually written by the CIA and handed to him for him to put his name to. I hope so, because it's very, very revealing what he talks about. To me, as far as I'm concerned, the way he frames it, this is just sour grapes for the fact that Xi is succeeding in helping his people. And the Western colonial powers are cut out of dividing up the spoils here in China, like they did for over 100 years, and as they've had their way for the last 5 centuries. And so they have not been able to destabilize China, although they've been trying since 1949. And so the only thing left now is to demonize Xi, and that's going to become more and more prominent in the Western press. You can start tracking it as they have done with Castro, Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, now his replacement Maduro. Putin, of course, is now the new poster child for total demonization, and it's starting with Xi already. And the lack of obvious achievements for economic reform as far as the West is concerned. There's actually a lot of reforms going on over here, but because it does not allow the West to come in and plunder China's resources and take over its economy, Willie Lam is saying that Xi is consolidating power out of a Maoist-style self-aggrandizement rather than a genuine commitment to Deng-style, Deng, as in Deng Xiaoping, liberalization. And he also went on to say that Western corporate skepticism, if not frustration, that it is not easy for the Western corporations to break into areas that are monopolized by well-connected Chinese firms. Well, boo-hoo. The West has been so used to having the laws and rules written in their favor and using gunboat diplomacy to plunder natural resources and peoples around the world for so long that they have forgotten how to, I guess, compete in a country. He also goes on to say that this cult, that she is creating a cult. And I just thought back through Western history. What about Reagan is God? Ronald Reagan is God. I had many people tell me that. Ronald Reagan is God. I would say that many people thought that Franklin Roosevelt was God too, for what he did to help so many people. Churchill was worshipped by the British. Kennedy was, there was an absolute, if you want a cult around the Kennedys. Margaret Thatcher, there is no other way. And the adoration and the adulation for her. Charles de Gaulle in France. It's for those guys and ladies, it's charisma, it's building a following. But when she is doing the same thing here in China and around the world, it is a cult. And so what I've learned is, as I'm writing Xi's diaries, and I've actually collected a whole list of what I call trigger words that the West uses to demonize China and Xi Jinping, and I'll do a program on that in the future. There's many of them. You just hear these words and you immediately, you have in your mind some, very negative concept or image in your mind, and cult is one of those. So that was also something that Willie Lamb complained about. And the other one that I keep reading about as I'm doing research and writing Xi's diaries is that Westerners think that Xi feels entitled to his position as president. He's entitled to his power. Well, I would be too if I had his background. What I don't hear is that Obama, who was a graduate of Columbia and Harvard, and if you do your research, it's his mother and grandmother were CIA agents, and who worked for, and he actually worked for a CIA front company after he got out of college for a year and a half, and they paid off all of his school debts. And his wife, he and his wife are worth $12 million. Another 12 million for him and 12 million for her, so they're worth about $24 million. You don't think they feel entitled to their positions of power? Of course, Michelle also went to an Ivy League school. Or what about George Bush, a Yale graduate from a wealthy aristocratic family? He's worth $35 million. Or Bill Clinton, a Georgetown, Oxford, Yale graduate and his wife is also a Yale graduate. They were already well off when he got into the White House, and now together they're worth more than $100 million together. Or François Hollande in France, who is what the French call énarque from the National School of Administration, which is like the Yale or the Harvard of France, to ascend into the towers of power in France. Being a socialist, he's only worth $2 million, but you don't think he feels a little bit entitled, being an ENA graduate and a multimillionaire? And David Cameron, a Oxford graduate worth $50 million, you don't think he feels entitled to his position of power in the UK? At least Xi Jinping lived in a cave and toiled with his back in poverty for 7 years and worked his butt off for 30 years in the trenches of managing towns, cities, provinces before becoming president. He too he also got a graduate degree, got a degree from a high-powered school here in China, Tsinghua University, which is now ranked as one of the top schools in the world. And so, and then all these ridiculous estimates that she is worth $100 million, you know, on these Western websites. His family members together, all the in-laws and sisters and brother, that's all in my, you know, in the diaries that I'm writing. They may be worth $100 million, but he definitely is not. It just is not in his character. So, of course, she feels entitled to his position of power. He is no different than George Bush or Obama and Michelle Obama, the Clintons, etc., David Cameron, Francois Hollande. Power, money, and elite education go together like a hot dog in a bun with relish on it. The last thing I want to talk about today is Xi Jinping gave a speech last week at the Boao Forum in Hainan, the big island off the southern coast of China near Vietnam. The Boao is a forum that the Chinese started a few years back as an anti-Davos and an anti-World Economic Forum. And given the fact that the Chinese are doing so many constructive things around the world, it is now one of the most hotly contested places to come, to get an invitation to come. World leaders, foreign ministers, high-powered business people from all over the world are now coming to this. She gave the keynote speech and just spelled out the Silk Roads, what he is now calling the Belts and Roads project, to basically crisscross Eurasia from China down to Singapore to Lisbon and Portugal, all the way into Africa, with railroads, telecommunications, fiber optics, and 4-lane highways. It's just impressive to see the vision that China and Xi have for the future of Eurasia. So with the 50 billion that the Chinese have pumped into the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, they've pumped 40 billion into the new Belts and Roads project. They also have their string of pearls to construct ports all across southern Asia over towards the Suez Canal. They've pumped 10 billion into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and they'll pump another 50 billion into the BRICS New Development Bank. That is $150 billion that's been provided by the Chinese to its neighbors, all in the last 5 years. In current dollars, this is as much as the United States spent in the Marshall Plan in Europe to reconstruct Western Europe. Just think about the magnitude of that, and the fact that the Marshall Plan was highly political. If you were not a vassal state of the United States, you did not get a nickel. You know, Stalin was actually promised Marshall Plan money as part of the deal to conquer the Nazis. But of course that promise was reneged on as soon as Hitler and the Germans surrendered, and the Japanese, which the Russians were responsible for getting the Japanese to surrender. That's in my first book, 44 Days. So if you were not an American ally, as they call them, you didn't get a nickel. Whereas China's money is going to anybody and everybody who wants to work with the Chinese, even countries that are not maybe closely aligned with China, but they are just going out and promoting their vision of an integrated, coordinated economic bloc from Lisbon, like I say, all the way to Vladivostok, down to Singapore, to Sri Lanka, all across Asia. It's pretty impressive. I'll come back with a new program after we get back from the Philippines for a week, and I hope you enjoy the show today. Have a good one.